And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at a game called Desktopia. This is a Russian game, so the name of the box is different, but the game is called Desktopia, as can be seen here on the rule book. Desktopia is a flicking game in which you have discs and flick them at each other. Now, there have been many different games. There is a space game where you flick and make empires. There's a dungeon crawling game. There are race games where you flick things. This is the first one I've seen where it's an all-out war, where one person has an army and another person has an army, and they flick discs at each other. When I heard about this, I was very excited. I thought it was a cool idea. The theme itself is kind of silly. Basically, when I turn off the light, these guys come to life and fight each other. So they basically arise. So apparently these guys are fighting. As soon as this video's off, and when I leave the room, they're all going to fight. Well, that sounds cool. But anyhow, let's take a look at the game, and we'll be back. So here we have the different pieces for the different armies, the order of dust, the order of grass, the order of fire, and the order of metal. And each of these armies comes with a different piece shown here, and you have to sticker them yourself. And they also come with a set of cards that show different things that you can do. That shows how the different characters in the game act. There's also an extra deck of cards which you can play with that kind of adds special things to the game. Different rules and such. They recommend that only advanced players play with them. Now, what you're going to be doing in this game is you're going to be using a book here, and this book is this script book. It's different than the rule book, and it shows different setups and scenarios that you can set up and play over the course of the game. Now, this table isn't the perfect table to do this stuff on. I don't normally play on the felt. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to be setting up your army, and you will be, on your turn, you have 3 actions. You'll be using those actions to flick your discs at your opponent's discs. And most of the time when you flick another disc, you will do a point of damage to it. Now, you have to be careful not to flick your guys off the table, because if you do, you will lose an action, which could happen this turn or in a future turn. Now, the discs are different sizes. There are little tiny discs that when you kill them, they are gone. There are bigger heroic discs that when you hurt them, you'll flip them over and it will show that they've taken a point of damage because, for example, the hornbug here, you can see here, he hasn't been damaged at all, but when I flip him over, it shows a little point here that he's been damaged. But for heroes themselves, they will take quite a few points of damage, and it all depends on that hero, and you will mark those on the card. So you can see this hero here takes 6 damage, and you'll use little tokens to put on the card as they take damage. Each side also has an artifact, and those artifacts can be used, like for example, Fountain of Life. And then finally, there's these little discs. Many of the characters have a chance to do a ranged attack where you'll put the little disc next to your disc and shoot that disc at somebody else. Other than that, it's basically a little bit different on how the cards act. The Dust Army is all about death. Like you can see when this guy dies, you can put his disc on top of someone else's card, giving him plus. And they have different missile attacks. The tick missiles. They can hear that this target hits. The Lariat of Pain is their artifact. The target's hit deals an extra point of damage, but the target also receives a point of damage in return. Swapping the Phantom disc with some other disc character, being able to have some good maneuverability. The fire folks are exactly what you think they might be. They basically can set other people on fire, and they also have some pretty cool... The artwork in this game is phenomenal, by the way. So, like when an elemental hits a character with flame missiles mounted on them, the latter receives double the damage. So essentially, if you hit somebody with a flame token and start that person on fire, and then you hit them with this elemental, then you'll do double damage to that person. So the fire starts people on fire, doing more damage to them. The Order of Grass, which I still think is one of the funniest names there is, essentially is the healing faction. This guy, when he hits an allied factory, they recover a point. Same thing with her, the Dryads. So they're all about being able to help your opponents out and help your allies out and give them hit points. And then finally we have the Lightning guys, or the Order of Metal, I suppose. And this guy here gets lightning missiles that he can shoot at people, and they will do damage based on how many are in reserve. And you can get extra actions with the different people, or a bonus time card when you use this person, which will actually give you an extra action on a future turn. So they're all about conserving actions. There's not much more to say about that. The game is essentially you take a bunch of discs and flick them at my discs. I take discs and flick them at yours, trying to kill them, trying to accomplish goals. Sometimes there's artifacts. When you hit an artifact, it's yours, and then your opponent can hit it back and steal it, and you're both using artifacts. And like I said, there's many different scenarios in a book that you can play against one another. Now, obviously, that's a very brief overview of how Desktopia plays. But, I mean, really, no matter what the rule books, what everything, it's essentially flicking discs at each other. You can talk about strategy and the different tactics, but if you can't flick, you're going to lose. There's no doubt about it. Flicking is the #1 skill that's important in this game. And it kind of causes a little bit of sadness for me. I like flicking discs at the across table and attacking each other and doing things. The problem I have with this game is there's all these cool special abilities and all these neat things, but essentially a good chunk of your force is killed with 1 hit, another chunk is killed with 2 hits. And so what happens is boom, 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 people are dead all over the place, and there's a few guys left, and I don't get to see half the special abilities come into play as much as I'd like them to. It just seems like stuff dies too fast. The person who goes first has a huge advantage because he could effectively take out 3 units of your army. Of course, if he misses and his guys are sitting right there, you just flick them. Now, I'm glad they have the rule about going out of the play bounds makes you lose an action, because it makes people flick more softly, not just try to shoot stuff off the table. And I do like I said, the artwork is phenomenal. Everything is high quality. The rule books, spiral bound rule book, spiral bound scenario book, those are well done. It's easy enough to get into and play. It just, I don't know, I just have this lacking feeling. It's just not as fun as I wanted it to be. I wanted this grandiose battle, but what I feel are these smaller skirmishes that are over super fast, and basically whoever got luckier shooting won. I would love to see more hit points in each of the characters, which would make them last longer, and would make special abilities like the fire and the dust abilities, maybe it would make them a little bit more potent and interesting. So anyway, that's Desktopia. I think some people like it, but if you like flicking games, you should look into this. If you're kind of ambivalent on them and you're like, well, I'm kind of curious about the rest of the game, flicking is the #1 important thing of the game, and it just wasn't as fun as many of the other flicking games because it just seemed to be over too fast.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Hey, shut the door!